What is up, YouTube? Today I'm going to be going into how to automate document creation with using Zapier, connecting to Google Sheets and Google Docs. So this can be used for anything from invoicing to sales calls, like automating sales call scripts. Really anything that you want to do where it's like creating a document based on pulling certain data and plugging it in elsewhere, essentially for free, because I think you can get a free Zapier account. It might not run instantly, but it'll run every 15 minutes or so. But yeah, I'll get right into that. A little bit about me is I help businesses with workflow automation. So this was a recurring problem with some customers. They wanted something free, and I figured out how to do this. I hadn't seen a video like this, so we're going to be going into how to do that Zap. Alright, so to get started here, on the left we have Zapier, on the right we have all of our Google assets. So we have our Google Drive open, we have our Google Sheet, and our Google Doc. So important step as you're starting this out, because it might be a little bit frustrating if you don't do this. In Zapier, the accounts that you have connected, you want to be working in those Google accounts, or for that matter, any account that you have connected in Zapier. That's the account you want to be editing this stuff in. Otherwise, you're going to be confused, like, why isn't this populating? A lot of the times it's just because you're not in the right account. So I'll go through these Google assets real quick. So I have the Google Drive folder. That's where I have these two, the Google Sheet, which will store the information originally. And then Zapier will pull that information and throw it into our template Google Doc. I just have some stock information here. I have the trigger column, the reference number, which you'll see why in the sales script, invoice number. So I have a simple sales script and the invoice that I just pulled off of off Google. So now over to Zapier. We want to go to Zapier, and I just go to the dashboard, connect Google Sheets with Docs. It's pretty plug and play. There's really no coding involved here. There's a little bit in just editing the Google Doc to make sure that it works, but it's pretty simple. So for us, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the new or updated row to a spreadsheet row, and then the action is going to create a document from a template. So we're gonna go through all that and then use this Zap. Once that loads, I already connected my Google Sheets account. Once you connect it once, you don't have to connect it again, unless you want to use a different one. So the spreadsheet, we're going to use YouTube test sheet. And if these don't load, just press refresh fields, or you can come in here and click load more. And if that doesn't work, you can try to figure out how to get this out of the URL up here after D. If you copy and paste everything between the two backslashes and paste it in here, it should populate. If you have if you have like 20 in here. The worksheet is just going to be, we only have one sheet in there, so that's pretty easy. And then the trigger column is going to be the trigger column, because we have that defined. And you could just do this like on one of the pieces of data. The reason I do trigger column is because sometimes you might be editing the row and then it zaps unless you just copy paste all of the information. I just wouldn't want to have incomplete information in the sheet and then have it only pull half of the information as you're editing. So I like to get all of the information in there and then hit the trigger column, and then it spits out the final complete document. So all of that is right, so we'll continue. Test the trigger. Awesome. Look at some different rows. Seems to be working. So now we're going to create the document from a template. So this is it's a little bit tricky. It took me a little while to figure out what they meant by this, but for all the variables in our Google Doc, we will have to have two of these little squiggly brackets. I don't know the actual name for them, but so right here for first name, we'll have to have something like this, and that will later pull it in after we assign that to a specific column in our Google Sheet. So that's sort of how we end up doing this later on, but we'll keep going through this Zap, and I'll continue to show you how to set it up. So I will pick my Google Docs account. Alright, so the template document, we were having some trouble getting Zapier to find the template document, so we just kept going back out, back in until we got it to work. I haven't figured out a better way. Just keep clicking load more and refresh fields. It's a common problem and sometimes it just takes a while. Luckily, after it's done this time, you won't have to do it ever again. So what we're going to use is we're going to use YouTube test doc. It's the one we have pulled up right now. We don't need this one anymore. For your new document name, this can be either static or dynamic. So this can pull in data from the spreadsheet. So static would be like if I typed in, so type in test doc there, and then after that you could pull in your name as well as the full name of the client. That way you can tell which doc's which. If you have multiple sales advisors, then you could have them put their name and my name, and that way they can just scroll, like search or whatever that looks like, to the right place. So that would be dynamic data, is that my name and full name, because that pulls it from whichever row that you are using as the trigger in your Google Sheet. So for the folder, we're just gonna go click. So we got that picked, we got the test folder in there. You can see it over here. Okay, so we got that picked, we got the test folder in there. We found that it's actually going to be just a new folder. We had to create a new one so that it populated in Zapier. But we still have these sheets that we've connected, so I will go ahead and show you how to pull in the data from Google Sheets and put them in the doc. So right here you can see we have first name up here, formatted differently than first name down here. This is just a general sales script. I also want to pull in my name, or like the speaker's name, in twice. And this could be different information based on this is going to be dynamic information based on what happens in the Google Sheet. I also wanted a fun fact and a location and a reference. So for the first name, what we're going to do is we want to keep these the same for every time it's going to pull in the same piece of information, just so it makes it easier on us in Zapier when we're trying to pull in this information. So I'm going to make sure the caps are the exact same for that. And for ease here, we will just do a few of these, but you can do it with all of them. So my name. So now it looks a little bit funkier, but you can see over here on the left already, it's already pulled in first name, because that is the first one. That's the only one that we had when we connected this Zap. But we'll also throw in fun fact, because you might want a fun fact or whatever information. It just depends on which column, like what columns of information you have. You could also, like, if you wanted your phone number in here, but it's always going to be you, I could just put like and now it'll show up as that phone number every single time this document's created. So everything that's not in these squiggly brackets, the double squiggly brackets, that will be the same every single time. But this stuff is dynamic text, and you can have a period right after. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to like put a space or something afterwards. As long as you have those two squiggly brackets before and after, inward facing, you'll be good. I don't know if we had location, but we'll also throw some brackets around location. And we're also going to come down to invoice. And over here we have invoice number. So I think this is the only one we'll do for invoice number, but we'll just put num. Just so we can see that it does pull into the invoice template as well. And you can then go ahead and do all your formatting, do your dates, maybe have a date in the test sheet or in your template document. But we will go back over to Zapier after we have all of those, everything we want in there. After we have all of that complete, in the brackets everything we want to pull in these brackets. Then we will go over to Zapier and we will click refresh fields. You can do this many times. You can do it as you go just to see which ones you have. So you can see first name only appears once, even though it's in the template twice. My name also shows up. Fun fact, location, and num, they all also show up. So now this is sort of the fun part, is come back over to YouTube test sheet, and it's going to let you pick the columns for which the data correlates to. So for first name, if we remember right on here, that's going to be the client first name. So we just pick first name from there. And right now it says no data, but that's just because it's the test column without any data. And then my name has obviously my name. Fun fact. So that fun fact is not on here. So we need to go back over here and troubleshoot this a little bit. We can see we didn't put a column called fun fact on here. So we will put that there. And another thing to note is when you're doing this, you have to have the column headers on, so that Zapier knows that the column headers signify that that's the column you're going to be pulling in here. So we'll just refresh these fields and see if it pulls in fun fact. So it did not. So we might have to come back up here, click on this, find data. Come back through here just to refresh that a little bit, and then see if we get fun fact in here. Yep, so we indeed do get fun fact, and we can do this for all of these if we want. For location, I don't know if I did a location. I will not go through that. So this will be one of the times when we just don't put anything there. I mean, it will look kind of funny in the template that it spits out, but you don't have to put anything there. Invoice number. Alright, so now we've set up all of the fields that we want. We have a dynamic document name. It's going into our test folder. You could have like an invoice folder or a sales script folder. And then we also have all of this information dynamically being pulled. Press continue in Zapier. I always test and review before I let it go on. So it will test, it will send a document over to our test folder. This will be test doc. And I don't think this will pull in any information. Correct? So one thing to note is we did leave on, there's an option in there to leave these if the information is blank. I usually leave that just so, like if I'm talking to someone, I'm supposed to say their first name even if I don't have it. Maybe I do later down the line. So yeah, this works. Alright, so I had to come back over and create a new row because it was pulling from the end of my formulas as for like a new row. We'll pull from spreadsheet RD. We just came back in here to test this. Click load more and then pulled in. So we will go ahead and continue, and this pulled in the information even though it's all the way down at the bottom. And we will see a new test doc in here once we continue and go through all of this again. So we're going to retest this action. We will see the result of that being pulled in there. So we will go back to the test folder, just wait for it to pop up. So you can see it pulled in that dynamic text. We can see after we tested this, we want another space in there. So we'll go back in and throw a space in afterwards. But it says pretty nicely, hey Jane, this is Ben Green here. Yeah, that's awesome. And down here it pulled in invoice number 3, so it does indeed work. Alright, so I just went back in because in this test doc it didn't pull in the fun fact, and I wanted to make sure that was cleared up. So it was because I added the fun fact after I pulled in the test info. So I went ahead and clicked load more, pulled in spreadsheet row E, and we'll just go back in here and send this data again, retest the action, and we should see a new doc in here again with this test, and it should have the correct information in there. So yeah, I see Tom likes cookies. That's exactly what we had in here. So moving forward, I would just go ahead and clean up these location, the reference, any information you're pulling in, make sure it's exactly what you want, and then make sure everything is synchronous. So like make sure that my name appears the same as my name down here. That way you don't have to go through 10 different my names connecting the same column to that record. And then all you have to do from here is turn on the Zap and it'll do it every time. You can do that with invoices or really any really page designer type project. You can automate that with this Zap. Thank you guys for coming and watching. Make sure you hit subscribe. I'll be doing a lot more of these how-tos in the future. Yeah, hit the like button if you think this was helpful. Hit the subscribe button. I'll be getting a lot more content out of you guys. And if you want to talk to me about workflow automation or database implementation, just click the link in the description and set up a time to talk to me and we can see what will work best for you.